I stared at the DNA match on my computer screen, hands shaking. Ethan Mitchell, predicted relationship, full sibling. We shared 50% of our DNA. I'm an only child, or at least that's what my parents told me for 31 years. My name is Cameron Mitchell. I'm 31 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. Last Christmas, my girlfriend bought me one of those ancestry DNA kits as a joke gift. Find out if I'm secretly Viking or Italian or whatever. I spit in the tube, mailed it off, and forgot about it. 3 months later, I got an email that changed my life forever. I found out I have an identical twin brother my family hid from me my entire life. And when I uncovered why they did it, I realized I'd been living someone else's life all along. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe to Reddit Family Fallout, and turn on notifications. You're not going to believe where this story goes. Let's begin. Growing up, I was always the disappointment. My dad, Robert Mitchell, was a former college baseball star who expected me to follow in his footsteps. Instead, I was the kid who got winded running a lap, who preferred reading to sports, who chose art class over gym. Mom, Linda, was gentler about it, but I could see the sadness in her eyes every time I came home with another participation trophy instead of first place. They never said it outright, but I always felt like I wasn't quite what they wanted, like they were waiting for me to become someone else. The DNA test results came back in March. I logged into the website, expecting maybe some distant cousins, a breakdown of European ancestry percentages, the usual stuff. Instead, right at the top of my match list was a name I didn't recognize. Ethan Mitchell. Relationship? Full sibling. Confidence? Extremely high. Shared DNA? 50.2%. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Full sibling? That was impossible. I was an only child. My mom had difficult pregnancies, or so she'd always told me, and could only have one kid. That was the family story I'd heard my whole life. I clicked on Ethan's profile. He hadn't uploaded a photo, and his information was minimal. Age, 31. Location, Seattle, Washington. No message, no family tree, nothing personal. 31, my age. Seattle, just 3 hours from Portland. My hands started shaking. I screenshotted the match and sent it to my girlfriend, Jess. Me. What the hell is this? Jess. Holy shit, Cam, that's a sibling match. Me. I don't have a sibling. Jess. According to genetics, you do. I called my mom immediately. She answered, cheerful, unsuspecting. Cameron, how are you, sweetie? Mom, I need to ask you something weird. Did you and Dad is there any chance I have a brother you never told me about? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear her breathing, sharp and quick. Why are you asking that? Her voice had gone cold. I took a DNA test, one of those ancestry things. It matched me with someone named Ethan Mitchell, says we're full siblings. Those tests are wrong all the time. Her response came too fast, too defensive. They make mistakes. Mom, we share 50% of our DNA. That's not a mistake. That's a sibling. So I'm going to ask you again, do I have a brother named Ethan? Cameron, drop this, please. You don't understand what you're asking. Then help me understand. Do I have a brother named Ethan? Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Don't contact him. Please, Cameron. Don't do this to our family. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, heart pounding. She didn't deny it. She didn't say the test was wrong or that Ethan was a cousin or anything rational. She just told me not to contact him, which meant it was true. I had a brother. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept refreshing Ethan's profile page, hoping for more information. Around 2 a.m., I noticed the website had a messaging feature. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to a sibling you didn't know existed? Finally, I typed, Hi, Ethan. This is going to sound insane, but according to this DNA test, you're my brother. My name is Cameron Mitchell. I'm 31 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Last Christmas, my girlfriend bought me one of those ancestry DNA kits as a joke gift. Find out if I'm secretly Viking or Italian or whatever. I spit in the tube, mailed it off, and forgot about it. 3 months later, I got an email that changed my life forever. I found out I have an identical twin brother my family hid from me my entire life. And when I uncovered why they did it, I realized I'd been living someone else's life all along. We video called that same day. When Ethan's face appeared on my screen, I felt like I was looking into a mirror. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same slightly crooked nose. But where I was clean-shaven and wearing a hoodie, Ethan had a beard and was dressed in a button-down shirt. He looked polished, put together, everything I wasn't. This is surreal, I said. You're telling me. Ethan's voice was deeper than mine, or maybe that was just his confidence. I've known about you my whole life. I always wondered if you knew about me. You've known? How? He leaned back in his chair. I was adopted, Cameron, when I was 3 days old. The agency told my adoptive parents I was from a closed adoption, that my birth mother wanted no contact. But when I turned 18, I requested my original birth certificate. That's when I found out my birth name was Ethan Robert Mitchell, born at Portland General Hospital, Twin B. Twin B? The words hit me like a physical blow. I was Twin A? According to the records, yeah. We were born 6 minutes apart. You were kept. I was given up. I felt sick. Why would they do that? Who gives away one twin and keeps the other? That's the question I've been asking for 13 years. Ethan's jaw tightened. I tried to find you. I hired a private investigator, searched social media, everything. But you were kept off the grid when you were little. No social media presence, no public records I could find. It wasn't until you uploaded your DNA that I finally had proof you existed. I don't understand. My mom told me she had a difficult pregnancy, that she could only have one child. Why would she lie? Have you asked her? She told me not to contact you, hung up on me when I pressed. Ethan nodded slowly. Sounds about right. Cameron, your parents, our biological parents, they made a choice. They chose you and got rid of me. I need to know why. Maybe they couldn't afford 2 kids? Maybe your dad's an executive at a tech company. Your mom's a real estate agent. I found their tax records. They weren't struggling financially, so it wasn't about money. The fact that he'd researched our parents, that he'd been watching from a distance all these years, should have felt creepy. Instead, it just made me sad. He'd spent his whole life looking for a family that had thrown him away. I'm going to confront them. This weekend. You should come with me. Ethan's expression shifted, surprise, then something like hope. You want me there? You deserve answers as much as I do. We arranged to meet in Portland that Saturday. I told my parents I was coming for dinner and that I was bringing someone they needed to meet. Mom tried to talk me out of it, but I was done being the compliant son who never asked questions. Saturday came. I picked Ethan up from his hotel, and we drove to my childhood home in silence. He stared out the window at the neighborhood, taking in the houses, the park where I'd played as a kid, the life that could have been his. Nice area, he said quietly. Yeah. Mom and Dad were waiting in the living room when we walked in. The moment they saw Ethan, Mom's face went white. Dad stood up so fast he knocked over his drink. Cameron, what is this? Dad demanded. This is Ethan, your other son, the one you gave away. Ethan and I stood side by side, identical mirrors of each other. Mom started crying. Dad's hands were shaking. You had no right to bring him here, Dad said, his voice trembling with rage. I had every right, I shot back. You lied to me my entire life. You told me I was an only child. You never mentioned I had a twin brother. It was a closed adoption, Mom sobbed. We were never supposed to see him again. You weren't supposed to find each other. Why? Ethan's voice was steady, controlled. Why did you keep Cameron and give me up? The silence stretched. Dad wouldn't look at us. Mom kept crying, her hands covering her face. Finally, Dad spoke, and what he said made my blood run cold. Because you were broken. What did you just say? I asked. Dad looked at Ethan with something like disgust. You were born with a heart defect. The doctor said you'd need surgery, possibly multiple surgeries. You were in the NICU for weeks. Cameron was healthy. We made a choice. You gave him up because he was sick? My voice was rising. What kind of parents do that? We were 24 years old, Mom shouted. We weren't ready for twins. We definitely weren't ready for a special needs child and the mountain of medical bills that would come with it. So you just threw him away like he was defective? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We gave him a chance at a better life, Dad insisted. We arranged a private adoption through the agency. We made sure he went to a good family. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. A good family. Is that what you told yourselves? Your adoptive parents were wonderful people, Mom said defensively. They had the resources to handle your medical needs. They gave you everything you needed. Except the truth, Ethan said coldly. They never told me I was a twin until I found my birth records. They never told me I had a brother. Do you know what that does to a kid? Growing up feeling like something's missing but not knowing what? I felt like I was going to be sick. Did you ever think about him? Ever wonder how he was doing?" Mom looked away. "Of course we did, but the adoption was closed. We weren't allowed contact." "Bullshit," Ethan said. "You chose closed adoption because you didn't want to deal with the guilt. You wanted to pretend I never existed." Dad's face was red. "We did what we thought was best." "Best for who?" I demanded, because it sure as hell wasn't best for Ethan. And you know what? It wasn't best for me either. I've spent my entire life feeling like I wasn't good enough for you, like I was somehow defective. Now I know why. I was living the life meant for both of us, and I could never measure up. "That's not true," Mom protested. "We love you, Cameron." "Do you? Or did you just love that I was the healthy one, the one you could keep?" The room fell silent. Ethan walked over to the mantel where family photos were displayed. He picked up a picture of me at age 5, wearing a baseball uniform. "This should have been both of us," he said quietly. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every family photo, I should have been there. You stole that from me." "We gave you to a family who could take care of you," Dad repeated stubbornly. "I don't care about that," Ethan's composure finally cracked. "I care that you looked at me as a newborn baby and decided I wasn't worth keeping. Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" "Your heart condition," Mom started, "was corrected with surgery when I was 6 months old. 1 surgery. I've been completely healthy ever since. So your excuse about medical bills and special needs, that lasted less than a year. You could have gotten me back. You could have fought to bring me home, but you didn't because you didn't want me." The truth of it hung in the air. They'd given him up not because they couldn't handle his medical needs, because they didn't want to. They'd chosen the easier path, the one perfect baby, instead of the complicated one. "I think we should go," I said to Ethan. "Wait," Mom pleaded. "Cameron, please, don't let this destroy our family." I turned to look at her. "You destroyed our family 31 years ago when you ripped it in half. I'm just finding out about it now." We left. Dad didn't try to stop us. Mom kept crying, but I couldn't bring myself to care. In my car, Ethan sat in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For ruining your relationship with your parents." "Our parents," I corrected, "and you didn't ruin anything. They did." We ended up at a bar downtown. Over drinks, Ethan told me about his childhood. His adoptive parents, Martin and Susan Wheeler, were good people who loved him, but they'd hidden the twin thing until he was 18, and even then had been reluctant to help him search. They were scared I'd love my biological family more, so they tried to discourage me from looking, said it would only hurt me to know. Were they right? Yes and no. It hurts like hell knowing Robert and Linda didn't want me, but finding you, that's worth something. I looked at my brother, my twin, and felt a pull I couldn't explain, like a missing piece clicking into place. "I want to know you, really know you, make up for lost time." Ethan smiled, and for the first time since we met, it reached his eyes. I'd like that. What I didn't know yet was that finding Ethan would unravel even more family secrets, and the worst was still to come. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I talked every day. Video calls, texts, sharing stories about our lives. We discovered we had eerily similar interests. Both loved horror movies, both played guitar, both were terrible at cooking. The nature versus nurture question was playing out in real time. I'd stopped talking to my parents entirely. They called constantly, left voicemails begging me to understand, to forgive them. I deleted them all without listening. Then one night, Ethan called me sounding strange. "Cam, I found something. Something bad." "What is it?" "Can you come to Seattle? I need to show you in person." I drove up the next morning. Ethan met me at his apartment, a nice place in Capitol Hill with floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Coffee?" he offered. "Just tell me what's going on." He pulled out a manila folder. "I hired that private investigator again, asked him to dig deeper into Robert and Linda, find out why they really gave me up. And there's more to the story." He handed me a document. "This is a police report from a week before we were born." I read it. Robert Mitchell, assault, charges dropped. Dad got in a bar fight? Keep reading. The details made my stomach turn. Robert had gotten into an altercation with another man, nearly sent him to the hospital. The charges were dropped because the other guy didn't want to press charges, but there was a note from the responding officer. Suspect appeared intoxicated and showed aggressive behavior. Wife present, visibly pregnant and distressed. Okay, so Dad had a violent incident. That's bad. But there's more. Ethan pulled out another document. Medical records from the hospital. I got them through, let's call it, creative means. Ethan, that's illegal. I don't care. Look at this. The record showed that Linda Mitchell had been admitted to the ER 2 months before we were born, injuries consistent with a fall. But handwritten notes from a nurse suggested something else. Patient nervous when husband present, bruising pattern inconsistent with stated cause of injury. I felt cold. Are you saying Dad hit Mom while she was pregnant? I'm saying someone did, and there's a pattern. He spread out more documents. 3 ER visits during her pregnancy, all attributed to falls or accidents, all with notes from staff suggesting possible domestic violence. Jesus Christ. Here's where it gets really dark, Cam. Ethan's voice dropped. I found Linda's therapist's name in the medical records. I called her, pretended to be Linda, said I needed my old records. The receptionist let slip that Linda had been in therapy from the time we were born until we were about 5 years old. For what? Postpartum depression, but also trauma. And get this, there are billing records for couples therapy too. Robert and Linda were in marriage counseling for 3 years after we were born. The pieces were starting to come together, but I didn't want to see the picture they made. What are you saying? Ethan looked me dead in the eye. I think Robert hurt Linda during her pregnancy. I think when we were born and I had the heart defect, they blamed it on the stress and violence of those 9 months. And I think Linda couldn't handle having both of us because every time she looked at me, she saw what Robert had done to her. That's a huge leap. Is it? Think about it, Cam. Why keep one twin and not the other when the medical issues were fixable? Why choose to split us up? Unless seeing me reminded her of the trauma, I finished quietly. Or unless Robert convinced her to give me up. Maybe he didn't want the damaged kid. Maybe the medical bills scared him. Maybe he just didn't want to deal with the reminder of what he'd done. I sank onto Ethan's couch, head spinning. We can't prove any of this. It's all speculation. Maybe, but I'm gonna find out. Ethan pulled out his phone. I found Linda's old therapist. She's retired now, but she lives in Eugene. I called her yesterday. Ethan, she can't talk to you about a patient. There's doctor-patient confidentiality. She can if the patient releases her to. He showed me his phone screen, a forwarded email. I sent Linda an email from a burner account, told her I had these medical records and police reports, and that I was going to the press with a story about how they gave up their disabled child to hide evidence of domestic violence. You blackmailed her? I gave her an option. Either she signs a release for her therapist to talk to me, or I go public with everything I found. She signed. This is insane. This is justice. Ethan's eyes were hard. Dr. Patricia Reynolds has agreed to meet us next week. She'll tell us the truth. And then what? What's your end game here? I want them to admit what they did. I want the world to know that they didn't give me up because of medical bills or because they were too young. I want everyone to know they gave me up because I was a reminder of violence and shame and imperfection. Ethan, this could destroy them. Good. They destroyed me first. I looked at my brother and saw the rage that had been building for 31 years. He wasn't just looking for answers anymore. He was looking for revenge. And despite everything, I understood why.
Dr. Patricia Reynolds lived in a quiet neighborhood in Eugene, in one of those craftsman-style houses with a perfect garden. She answered the door herself, a woman in her 70s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a bun. "You must be Ethan and Cameron," she said. "Come in." Her living room was filled with books and comfortable furniture. She served us tea and settled into her armchair, studying both of us with professional interest. "Identical twins," she observed. "The resemblance is remarkable." "We were separated at birth," Ethan said. "You treated our mother, Linda Mitchell, starting in 1994. We want to know why she gave me up." Dr. Reynolds sighed. "I can't give you my therapy notes. Those remain confidential, but Linda signed a release allowing me to speak generally about our work together, so I'll tell you what I can." "Did our father abuse her?" I asked bluntly. Dr. Reynolds was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to be very careful with my words here. Linda came to me suffering from severe postpartum depression and PTSD. She had experienced trauma during her pregnancy, trauma that left her feeling unsafe in her own home." "Robert," Ethan said. "I never met your father," Dr. Reynolds continued, "but Linda described a marriage that had become volatile during her pregnancy. There was substance abuse involved, alcohol primarily. There were arguments that escalated into physical confrontations." "He hit her," I said, feeling nauseous. I'm not going to confirm or deny specifics. What I will say is that Linda gave birth to twins under extremely stressful circumstances. One of you had a medical issue that required immediate intervention. The other, Cameron, I presume, was healthy. I nodded. Linda was overwhelmed. She was traumatized, dealing with a new baby with medical needs, another new baby who was healthy, and a husband who was also struggling. She made a decision in what she felt was the best interest of everyone involved. She gave me away, Ethan said flatly. Dr. Reynolds looked at him with compassion. She placed you for adoption, yes, but it wasn't as simple as not wanting you, Ethan. Linda was drowning. She was barely able to care for one infant, let alone two. And every time she looked at you, with your medical equipment and hospital visits, she was reminded of the stress and trauma of her pregnancy. So she chose Cameron because he was easier. She chose Cameron because she felt she could keep him safe. You, Ethan, needed more than she could give at that moment in her life. She believed, rightly or wrongly, that you would have a better chance with a family who had the emotional and financial resources to handle your medical needs. But I was fine after 6 months. The heart surgery fixed everything. She could have gotten me back. By then, you were already bonded with your adoptive family, and Linda was barely holding herself together. She and Robert were in marriage counseling. She was on medication for depression. She was trying to be a mother to Cameron. Bringing you back would have meant tearing you away from the only parents you'd known and disrupting what little stability she'd managed to create. So she just forgot about me? Ethan's voice cracked. She never forgot about you, Ethan. Linda talked about you constantly in our sessions. She grieved you, Ethan. She second-guessed her decision for years, but she also believed she'd made the right choice given the circumstances. What about Robert? I asked. What did he think of all this? Dr. Reynolds hesitated. Robert supported the adoption decision. From what Linda told me, he struggled with the idea of raising a medically fragile child. He wanted things to be simple, normal. He wanted the perfect kid, I said bitterly, and when I wasn't perfect, he spent my whole childhood disappointed. I can't speak to Robert's parenting, but I can tell you that Linda loved you both desperately. The adoption wasn't about not wanting you, Ethan. It was about survival. We left Dr. Reynolds' house with more answers, but no comfort. In the car, Ethan stared out the window. It doesn't change anything. Trauma or not, they still gave me up. They still chose you over me. I'm sorry for all of it, for having the life you should have had. It's not your fault. But it felt like it was. I'd been the healthy one, the kept one, the one they chose, and all my life I'd felt inadequate, never quite good enough for them. Now I understood why. I was living a life meant for both of us, and I could never fill that hole. What do you want to do now? I asked. Ethan pulled out his phone. I want them to admit it, publicly. I've been documenting everything. The medical records, the police reports, Dr. Reynolds' confirmation. I'm going to write our story and post it online. Let the world see what kind of people they are. Ethan, that's going to destroy them. Dad's career, Mom's reputation. You think I care? He turned to me, eyes blazing. They destroyed me first, Cam. They looked at me as a newborn baby and decided I wasn't worth keeping. Every birthday you celebrated, every Christmas morning, every family vacation, I should have been there. They stole that from me. I couldn't argue with him. He deserved his anger. What I didn't expect was how quickly everything would spiral out of control once he posted our story online, or what we'd discover next about our family's secrets. Ethan posted our story on a popular social media platform 3 days later. He included scanned copies of the adoption papers, the police report, the medical records, with identifying info redacted, and a photo of us side by side, identical twins separated at birth. The post went viral within hours. 10,000 shares, 20,000, 50,000. The comments section exploded. People were outraged, sympathetic, shocked. News outlets started reaching out for interviews. Someone even started a hashtag #FindEthansMitchell. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends I hadn't talked to in years were calling. Co-workers were asking questions. And my parents? They were being crucified in the court of public opinion. Someone leaked Dad's identity and work info. His employer released a statement saying they were investigating the matter. Mom's real estate license number got posted online, along with demands that she be sanctioned. I called Ethan, panicking. You need to take it down. This is getting out of hand. No way. People deserve to know the truth. They're getting death threats, Ethan. Someone posted our address online. Good. Maybe they'll finally understand what it feels like to be unwanted. This isn't justice. It's mob rule. Then maybe they should have thought about that before they threw me away. He hung up on me. I sat in my apartment, watching the story spread across the internet like wildfire. That's when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Cameron Mitchell? The woman's voice was professional, clipped. Yes? My name's Diane Morrison. I'm an attorney representing the Wheeler family, Ethan's adoptive parents. They've asked me to reach out to you regarding your brother's recent social media activity. My stomach dropped. I don't control what Ethan posts. We're aware of that. However, Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler are concerned about the narrative being presented. They'd like to meet with you, privately, today, if possible. Why? Because there are things about Ethan's adoption you don't know, things that put your brother's story in a very different light. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room at a law office in downtown Portland. Martin and Susan Wheeler were there, both in their mid-60s, well-dressed, nervous-looking. Their attorney sat beside them. "Thank you for coming," Susan said. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "What's this about?" Martin cleared his throat. "We love Ethan. We've loved him since the day we brought him home from the hospital. But this story he's telling, it's not the whole truth." "What are you talking about?" Susan pulled out a folder. "When we adopted Ethan, we were told very specific things about the circumstances of his adoption. Robert and Linda Mitchell didn't just give him up because of medical bills or trauma." She slid a document across the table. It was an adoption agency report, dated February 1994. "Read Section 4, the attorney said. I read, "Birth parents requested closed adoption due to concerns about attachment disorder and infant's failure to bond with birth mother. Birth mother reported feeling emotionally detached from twin B while bonding normally with twin A. Psychiatric evaluation recommended separation to ensure both mother and infant's well-being." I looked up, confused. "What does this mean?" "It means Linda couldn't bond with Ethan," Martin said gently. "After he was born, after all the medical trauma, she struggled to connect with him emotionally. She could care for you, Cameron, but when she held Ethan, she felt nothing." That can't be true." Susan's voice shook. "The agency told us Linda tried for weeks. She wanted to love both of you, but something in her brain, some combination of trauma and postpartum depression and stress, wouldn't let her bond with Ethan. She was terrified she would hurt him, not intentionally, but through neglect, through that emotional disconnection." "So they gave him up to protect him," I said slowly. "They gave him up because Linda begged the doctors to help her. She was having intrusive thoughts about harming Ethan, not because she wanted to, but because she felt nothing toward him and was terrified of what that meant." The attorney leaned forward. "What your brother is describing as abandonment was actually an incredibly painful decision to ensure his safety. Linda didn't choose you over him, Cameron. She chose to place Ethan with a family who could love him properly, rather than raise him in a home where his mother might hurt him out of detachment." I felt like the ground was shifting under me. "Does Ethan know this?" "We tried to tell him when he was 18, Susan said, tears streaming down her face. "But he was so angry. He didn't want to hear it. He wanted to believe his biological parents were monsters who threw him away because he was broken. It fit his narrative better than the truth." "Which is what?" "That Linda loved him enough to give him up," Martin said. "She knew she couldn't give him what he needed, so she made sure he went to people who could." I stared at the documents, mind racing. Why didn't Linda just tell us this when we confronted her? "Shame," Susan said simply. "What mother wants to admit she couldn't bond with her own child? What woman wants to confess she had thoughts about harming her baby, even if she never acted on them? It's easier to let people think you're selfish than to admit you were that broken." "Ethan's story online, he's making them out to be abusers." "I know, and it's destroying them. Robert lost his job yesterday. Linda's been hospitalized for a panic attack. But more than that, Cameron, it's destroying Ethan too. He's built his entire identity around being unwanted. If he accepts the truth, he has to let go of that anger, and that anger is all he has left." The attorney pulled out another document. "We're prepared to file a defamation lawsuit if the post isn't removed. But frankly, that would only make things worse. What we're hoping is that you can talk to him, help him understand." I left the meeting feeling like I'd been gutted. Everything Ethan had told me, everything we'd built our newfound relationship on, was based on a version of events that wasn't quite true. Yes, Robert had been violent during the pregnancy. Yes, there was trauma. But the adoption wasn't about choosing one twin over the other. It was about a mother so traumatized she couldn't bond with her own child and was terrified of what that might lead to. I called Ethan immediately. "Did you know?" I demanded when he answered. "Did you know about the adoption papers actually said about why Mom gave you up?" Silence. "Ethan, answer me. Did you know about the attachment disorder? About Mom's intrusive thoughts?" "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "It does matter. You're destroying them over a story that's not true." "It is true. She didn't want me. She wanted you safe. She was having thoughts about hurting you because her brain was broken from trauma. She gave you up to protect you." Or that's just the excuse she told everyone so she wouldn't look bad. "Ethan, I just met with Martin and Susan. They showed me the agency reports. There are psychiatric evaluations. This isn't some story Mom made up. It's documented medical fact." "I don't care," his voice broke. "Don't you get it, Cam? If I accept that version, then what? I'm supposed to just forgive them? Thank them for abandoning me? I've spent 31 years being the kid nobody wanted. That's who I am. Without that, I'm nothing." And there it was, the real truth. Ethan didn't want to hear about attachment disorders or medical necessity. He needed to be the victim. It was the only identity he had. "You're my brother," I said quietly. "That's who you are. Not the abandoned kid, not the unwanted twin, just my brother." He hung up on me. I sat in my apartment, watching the story spread across the internet like wildfire. That's when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Cameron Mitchell?" The woman's voice was professional, clipped. "Yes? My name's Diane Morrison. I'm an attorney representing the Wheeler family, Ethan's adoptive parents. They've asked me to reach out to you regarding your brother's recent social media activity." My stomach dropped. I don't control what Ethan posts. We're aware of that. However, Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler are concerned about the narrative being presented. They'd like to meet with you, privately, today, if possible. "Why?" "Because there are things about Ethan's adoption you don't know, things that put your brother's story in a very different light." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room at a law office in downtown Portland. Martin and Susan Wheeler were there, both in their mid-60s, well-dressed, nervous-looking. Their attorney sat beside them.
The media circus intensified. A local news station in Portland ran a segment titled "Twins Separated at Birth Exposes Parents' Dark Secret." They interviewed Ethan via video call, and he played the part of the wronged son perfectly. Articulate, emotional, compelling. He left out the attachment disorder. He left out Linda's psychiatric evaluation. He told the story he wanted to tell. I watched from my apartment, unable to look away from the train wreck. The reporter asked Ethan what he wanted from his biological parents. "Acknowledgement," Ethan said, looking directly into the camera. "I want them to admit what they did was wrong. That choosing to keep one son and discard the other, no matter what excuse they give, was cruel. I want Cameron to know the truth about the people who raised him." My phone rang. It was Mom. "Cameron, please, you have to get him to stop." Her voice was raw. "My father can't find work. Our neighbors won't speak to us. Someone threw a brick through our window yesterday. Mom, I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for you. This is tearing you apart too. I can hear it in your voice. Ethan isn't the only victim here. Maybe you should have thought about that before lying to me for 31 years. I know, you're right. But Cameron, I need you to understand something. When Ethan was born and they put him in my arms, I felt nothing. Not love, not connection, nothing. It was like looking at a stranger's baby. But when I held you, I felt everything. I loved you so much it scared me." "So you gave away the one you didn't love?" "I gave away the one I was afraid I would hurt." She was crying now. "I was having thoughts, Cameron, terrible thoughts, about dropping him, about forgetting to feed him, about just leaving him somewhere. The doctor said it was a trauma response mixed with postpartum psychosis. They said I needed help, so we found him parents who could give him what I couldn't." "Did you ever try to get him back after you got better?" The pause told me everything. "No," she whispered. "By then, he was their son, and I was afraid I still wouldn't be able to love him properly. I was afraid I'd fail him again." "So you just erased him from our lives, pretended he never existed?" "Yes, God help me, yes, because it was easier than facing what I'd done every single day." I hung up on her, but her words stayed with me. This wasn't a simple story of good and evil. It was trauma upon trauma, people making impossible choices, and everyone suffering for it. That night, Ethan posted again. This time he included screenshots of messages he claimed were from Robert, messages threatening legal action, calling him an embarrassment, telling him to take down the posts. The internet exploded.
Hashtag cancel Robert Mitchell started trending. Someone found Dad's LinkedIn and flooded it with comments. Mom's real estate agency released a statement distancing themselves from her. And through it all, Ethan kept posting, kept adding fuel to the fire. I finally drove to Seattle to confront him in person. When he opened his apartment door, I barely recognized him. He looked manic, eyes bright, energy crackling around him. "Cam, did you see? We're on national news now. People are finally listening." "Ethan, this has to stop." "Stop? Why would it stop? This is what they deserve." "No, it's not. You're not telling the whole truth. You're leaving out the attachment disorder, Mom's psychosis, the fact that she was trying to protect you." "That's her excuse." He was pacing now, agitated. "Don't you see? She's rewriting history to make herself look like the hero." "I saw the agency reports myself. The psychiatric evaluations are real. Or they're fabricated, or she exaggerated symptoms to get rid of the baby she didn't want. You're so naive, Cameron. You still want to believe they're good people." "I don't know what they are anymore, but I know you're destroying them over a version of events that's not complete." "Good. Let them know what it feels like." I stepped closer to him. "What happened to you, Ethan? When did this become about revenge instead of truth?" He stopped pacing. When he looked at me, there was something cold in his eyes. It was always about revenge. From the moment I found out I had a twin brother living the life that should have been mine. You think I took that DNA test by accident? You think I didn't know exactly what I'd find? My blood went cold. "What are you saying?" "I've been tracking Robert and Linda for years, Cam. Ever since I turned 18 and found my birth records. I knew about you. I knew where you lived, where you worked, everything. I just needed the right moment to insert myself into your life." "You planned this? All of it?" "I waited for you to take a DNA test, and when you didn't do it on your own, I created a fake profile pretending to be a distant cousin and sent you a message suggesting you try one. Remember that random ancestry site message you got last year? That was me." I felt sick. "You manipulated me. I gave you the truth. Would you rather have lived your whole life not knowing you had a brother?" "I'd rather have a brother who didn't lie to me, who didn't use me as a weapon against our parents." "They're not our parents, Cameron. They're yours. I'm just the defective spare part they threw away." "That's not true, and you know it. Then why did they keep you and not me?" His voice cracked, and suddenly he looked less like a vengeful crusader and more like a broken kid. "Why did they choose you?" "Because Mom was sick, Ethan. Because she was traumatized, and her brain wouldn't let her bond with you. It's not your fault. It's not their fault. It's just what happened." "I don't accept that. You have to. This vendetta is destroying everyone, including you." He turned away from me. "Get out. Ethan, get out of my apartment. We're done." I left, knowing I'd lost him. The brother I'd just found was consumed by rage and grief and 31 years of feeling unwanted. And nothing I said would change that. But the story wasn't over yet, because 3 days later, something happened that changed everything again.
I got a call from an unknown number at 2 a.m. I almost didn't answer. "Cameron Mitchell?" The voice was female, young, unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name's Charlotte Morrison. I'm David Morrison's daughter." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "I'm sorry, who?" "David Morrison. He was Linda Mitchell's boyfriend before she got back together with your father, the one from that summer in 1990. My mind raced. "How do you know about that?" "Because your story has been everywhere online, and when my dad saw the pictures of you and Ethan, he freaked out, called me in the middle of the night saying he needed to tell me something." "I don't understand. What does your dad have to do with this?" "Cameron, my dad thinks there's a chance he's your biological father, not Richard Mitchell." The world tilted. "That's impossible. The DNA test showed Ethan and I are identical twins." "Right, which means you have the same father. But what if that father isn't Richard?" "Linda told me," I started, but Charlotte cut me off. "Linda told you she got back with Richard after that summer and assumed he was your father. But Dad said they were together right up until mid-September. Your birthday is what, early June?" "June 8th. That means you were conceived in early September, which overlaps with when Dad and Linda were still seeing each other." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Why would your dad think he's our father?" "Because he's been watching this whole thing unfold online. He saw pictures of you and Ethan. And Cameron, you look exactly like my brother Tyler did at your age. Same face, same build, everything. Dad pulled out old photos and nearly had a panic attack. This is insane." "I know, but Dad wants to do a paternity test. He needs to know for sure. And if he is your biological father, then everything you think you know about why Ethan was given up is wrong." I met David Morrison 2 days later at a DNA testing center in Portland. He was 62, with graying hair and kind eyes that did look familiar when I really studied them. Charlotte came with him, a woman my age, with dark hair and a nervous smile. "I'm sorry we're meeting like this," David said as we sat in the waiting room. "I had no idea Linda was pregnant. If I'd known..." "Let's just get the test done, then we'll know for sure." The cheek swab took 5 minutes. The waiting for results felt like 5 years. 3 days later, I had my answer. David Morrison was my biological father, which meant he was also Ethan's biological father. Richard Mitchell wasn't our father at all. I called Charlotte immediately. "It's positive. He's our dad." "I know. He got the results too. Cameron, he's devastated. He had no idea we existed." "We need to tell Ethan." "Are you sure? Given everything that's happening? He deserves to know. This changes everything." I drove to Seattle that same day. Ethan had been ignoring my call since our fight, but I showed up at his apartment and pounded on the door until he answered. "What do you want, Cameron?" "It's important." He let me in reluctantly. His apartment was a mess, takeout containers everywhere, clothes on the floor. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I found our real father," I said without preamble. Ethan stared at me. "What?" "Richard Mitchell isn't our biological father. A man named David Morrison is. Mom was with him that summer before she got back with Richard. She thought Richard was our father, but she was wrong." "You're lying." I pulled out my phone and showed him the paternity test results. I had it done 3 days ago. David Morrison is our biological father, which means everything we thought we knew about why Ethan was given up. It's not the whole story. Ethan sank onto his couch, reading the results over and over. "I don't understand. If Richard isn't our father, then why did they give me up? Why keep me, not him?" "I think it's because Mom didn't know. She thought Richard was our father. She bonded with me, couldn't bond with you, and made a decision based on that. But Ethan, what if she couldn't bond with you because on some subconscious level she knew you weren't Richard's? That's insane." "Is it? Think about it. You had a heart defect, a genetic condition. What if her body somehow knew you carried different DNA? What if that's why she felt disconnected?" "You're reaching." "Maybe, but here's what I know for sure. Richard Mitchell raised me believing I was his son. He spent 34 years being a father to someone who wasn't biologically his, and you've spent the last month destroying him online for a situation he didn't even fully understand." Ethan's face went pale. "Oh, God." "Yeah. I accused him of giving me up because I was broken, but he's not even my father. He didn't give me up at all. Mom did. And Mom gave you up because she was traumatized and couldn't bond with you, not because you were defective, not because she didn't love you, because her brain was broken and she was trying to keep you safe." Ethan put his head in his hands. "What have I done? You've ruined their lives based on half-truths. Richard lost his job. Linda's been hospitalized. They're being harassed constantly. And it turns out Richard isn't even biologically responsible for any of this. I need to fix this. I don't know if you can. But even as I said it, I knew we had to try, because the real story was so much more complicated than either of us had realized, and there was still one more person we needed to hear from, Linda herself. Linda was in a psychiatric facility when we finally got permission to visit her. The doctors said she'd had a complete breakdown after Ethan's story went viral. Stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started having flashbacks to the trauma of our birth. They allowed us 30 minutes. We found her in a common room, staring out a window. She looked 20 years older than the last time I'd seen her. When she turned and saw both of us standing there, her face crumpled. "Cameron, Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." "We need to talk, Mom," I said gently. "We know the truth now, about David Morrison." Her eyes widened. "David? How do you—" "We found him, did a paternity test. He's our biological father, not Richard." Linda started crying, deep sobs that shook her whole body. A nurse moved toward us, but I held up a hand. "Please, just give us a minute." Ethan sat down next to Linda. I'd never seen him look so uncertain. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "Did you know Richard wasn't our father?" Linda shook her head. "Not for sure. I suspected. Later, after you were born. Richard is A positive. David was O negative. When the doctors told me your blood types, I knew there was a possibility, but I couldn't face it. Admitting Richard wasn't your father would have destroyed our marriage, destroyed our family. So you just pretended?" I convinced myself I was wrong, that maybe there was some genetic explanation. But deep down, yes, I knew. And I think that's why I couldn't bond with Ethan. Every time I looked at him, I saw my betrayal, my lie. He was living proof that I'd been with David. "But you bonded with me," I said. "I'm proof of the same thing."
You didn't have the heart defect. You were healthy, perfect. I could pretend you were Richard's son because you fit the image of what our child should be. But Ethan? She turned to him, tears streaming. Ethan, you were sick. You needed surgery. And every doctor's appointment, every test, every moment in the NICU, I was terrified they'd figure out Richard wasn't your father, that the whole lie would unravel. So you got rid of the evidence, Ethan said bitterly. I tried to protect you. Linda's voice rose. I was having terrible thoughts, Ethan. Thoughts about hurting you, about leaving you somewhere, about just making you disappear. I was scared of what I might do. The doctor said I had postpartum psychosis mixed with PTSD from things that happened during my pregnancy. Richard hurt you, I said. It wasn't a question. Linda nodded. He was drinking heavily. I'd told him I was pregnant right before we got married, and he was so happy. But then I think he started to suspect. The timing was off. I'd been with David until late September, and we got back together in October. When I found out I was pregnant in November, I told Richard it was from our first night back together, but I think he knew it was too soon for that to make sense. So he took it out on you? He got violent when he drank, pushed me, grabbed me, once shoved me down the stairs. I spent half my pregnancy terrified. And when you boys were born, and Ethan had the heart defect, Richard said it was God punishing me for being with David, for lying to him. The pieces finally clicked into place. This wasn't a simple story of a mother who couldn't bond with her child. It was a story of violence, lies, trauma, and impossible choices made by a woman trying to survive. Why didn't you leave him? Ethan asked. Where would I go? I had a newborn and no job. My family had disowned me for getting pregnant before the wedding. Richard threatened to take Cameron if I left, and honestly, I didn't think I deserved better. I'd lied to him, I'd gotten pregnant by another man. In my mind, I'd earned his rage. That's not how it works, I said. You didn't deserve to be abused. I know that now, but back then I was drowning, and when the social worker suggested adoption for Ethan, just Ethan, because I could bond with you, Cameron, it felt like a lifeline. I could save one of you, get him away from Richard's anger and my broken mind, give him a chance at a real family. Did Richard know I wasn't his son? Ethan asked. He suspected. That's why he agreed to the adoption so easily. He didn't want to raise another man's child, especially one who needed medical care and attention. Keeping Cameron was bearable because you were healthy. But me, I knew the truth. Both of you were David's sons, but admitting that would have meant losing Cameron too. We sat in silence, absorbing the weight of decades of secrets and lies. Finally, Ethan spoke. I've spent my whole life hating you for giving me up, building my identity around being the unwanted one. You were never unwanted. You were so wanted that I gave you away to people who could want you properly, who could love you without the trauma and the lies and the violence. And now you've destroyed my life, Richard's life, for a story I didn't fully understand. Linda reached out and took his hand. You were angry. You had every right to be. But I wasn't just angry at you. I was angry at Cameron for having the life I didn't get. I manipulated him, used him to get revenge on you. I know. Linda looked at me. Cameron, I'm so sorry. Sorry for lying to you. Sorry for giving away your brother. Sorry for raising you in a house full of secrets and violence. You deserved better. We both did, I said quietly. A nurse appeared at the door. Time's up. We stood to leave. At the door, Ethan turned back. Mom, for what it's worth, I forgive you. Linda broke down completely. We left her crying, but somehow it felt like healing tears instead of despairing ones. Outside, Ethan and I stood in the parking lot, unsure what came next. I have to make this right, Ethan said. I have to take down the posts, apologize publicly, tell the real story. Are you ready for that? No, but I have to do it anyway. He did. That night, Ethan posted a long statement explaining everything, the paternity test, Linda's trauma, the full context of the adoption. He apologized to Richard and Linda publicly. He admitted he'd manipulated the narrative. The internet didn't forgive him immediately, but slowly the death threats stopped, the harassment died down. People moved on to the next viral story.
3 months later, I sat in a coffee shop in Portland with Ethan, David Morrison, and my half-siblings Charlotte and Tyler. Richard wasn't there. He'd made it clear he wanted nothing to do with any of us. After everything that happened, I couldn't blame him. He'd raised me thinking I was his son, only to discover I wasn't. And then the whole world had watched as his life imploded. Linda was out of the psychiatric facility but living with her sister in California. She and Richard were separated, possibly heading toward divorce. The marriage had been built on lies and trauma, and there was no coming back from that. But here, in this coffee shop, something new was being built. So, Charlotte said, looking between Ethan and me, do you guys have that twin telepathy thing? We haven't known each other long enough to find out, Ethan said with a slight smile. But we're working on it, I added. David cleared his throat. I want you both to know I would have been there if I'd known. I would have raised you, supported Linda, everything. I missed 31 years of your lives, and that kills me. We know, I said, and I meant it. David had welcomed us into his life without hesitation, introducing us to Charlotte and Tyler, making space for us and his family. It wasn't perfect. Tyler was still adjusting to suddenly having 2 older brothers, but it was real. What about Martin and Susan? Tyler asked. Are they cool with all this? Ethan nodded. We're good. They understand I was processing a lot of trauma. They're my parents. Nothing changes that. And that was the truth of it. Ethan had 2 sets of parents now. The Wheelers who raised him, and the biological mess that was David Morrison and Linda Mitchell. I wasn't sure what I had. Richard wanted nothing to do with me. Linda was trying to heal. David was trying to make up for lost time. But I had Ethan, my identical twin, my brother, the person who shared my DNA and understood what it meant to grow up with half-truths and missing pieces. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Charlotte asked me. About Richard. I thought about it constantly. The man who'd raised me for 34 years wasn't my biological father. He'd spent more than 3 decades being my dad, teaching me to ride a bike, helping with homework, showing up at school events, all while suspecting I might not be his son. And when the truth came out, when he had every right to walk away, he'd lost everything because of Ethan's need for revenge. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to reach out, thank him for raising me, even if he thought I was his. But he doesn't want to hear from me. Give him time, David said. This is a lot for anyone to process. We spent another hour talking, sharing stories, trying to weave together the separate threads of our lives into something resembling a whole family. It was messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but it was honest. As we were leaving, Ethan pulled me aside. I'm sorry, he said, for using you, for manipulating you into helping me hurt them. I know you've apologized about 100 times. I'll probably apologize 100 more. Cameron, I spent so long being angry about what I didn't have that I couldn't see what I did have. Good parents, a good life, and now a brother. A brother who looks exactly like you, which is still weird. He laughed. So weird. We walked out together, identical in appearance, but so different in experience. 2 halves of a whole that had been split apart through trauma and lies and impossible choices made by broken people. I'd probably never fully understand why Linda gave Ethan up and kept me. The reasons were tangled in postpartum psychosis and domestic violence and secret paternity and medical crises. Maybe there was no simple answer. Maybe it was just a series of terrible moments that led to an impossible decision. What I did know was this. I'd found my brother. I'd found my biological father. I'd uncovered secrets that shattered my family and forced everyone to confront painful truths. And somehow, on the other side of all that destruction, we were building something new. It wasn't the family any of us had imagined. It wasn't neat or perfect or traditional. Richard and Linda's marriage was over. Ethan and I were trying to make up for 31 lost years. David was navigating being a father to adult sons he'd never known existed. Charlotte and Tyler were adjusting to suddenly having twin brothers. But it was ours. Messy, complicated, born from pain and lies and DNA tests we never should have needed. A month later, I got a letter. It was from Richard. Cameron, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I know I've been cold, unavailable, often cruel since the truth came out. I want you to understand why. When Linda told me she was pregnant, I was the happiest I had ever been. I know our marriage started rough. I know I wasn't always good to her during that pregnancy. I've done a lot of therapy since then, faced a lot of demons. The drinking, the violence, there's no excuse for it. But you, Cameron, you were mine from the moment I held you. Biology didn't matter. You were my son, and I loved you with everything I had. Finding out you weren't biologically mine broke something in me. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I realized I'd spent 34 years being your father without the right to that title. Every moment we shared, every lesson I tried to teach you, every time I told you I was proud, I felt like I stolen those moments from David Morrison. I don't blame you for any of this. You didn't know. You were lied to just like I was. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you when everything fell apart. I'm sorry I made you feel like my love was conditional on biology. You're my son, Cameron. You always will be. When you're ready, I'd like to talk. No pressure, just when you're ready. Dad. I read the letter 5 times. Then I picked up my phone and called him. Hello? His voice was cautious, uncertain. Hey, Dad, I got your letter.
Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob. Cameron. Yeah, I'm here. I'm so sorry for everything. Me too. Can we talk? In person? I'd like that very much. We met the next day. It was awkward and emotional and painful, but we talked, really talked, for maybe the first time in my life, about Linda, about David, about Ethan, about the lies we all lived with, about what it meant to be family when biology complicated everything. By the end, we weren't healed. You don't heal from that kind of trauma in one conversation, but we'd started, and that was enough. I called Ethan that night. Hey, I said when he answered. I saw Richard today. How'd it go? Good. Hard, but good. We're gonna try to rebuild, figure out what our relationship looks like now. I'm glad, Cam, really. What about you? How are you doing? Better. Martin and Susan are helping me find a therapist who specializes in adoption trauma, and David invited me to Thanksgiving. Charlotte and Tyler are insisting we all wear name tags so people can tell us apart. I laughed. That's actually not a bad idea. We walked out together, identical in appearance, but so different in experience. Two halves of a whole that had been split apart through trauma and lies and impossible choices made by broken people. I'd probably never fully understand why Linda gave Ethan up and kept me. The reasons were tangled in postpartum psychosis and domestic violence and secret paternity and medical crises. Maybe there was no simple answer. Maybe it was just a series of terrible moments that led to an impossible decision. What I did know was this. I'd found my brother. I'd found my biological father. I'd uncovered secrets that shattered my family and forced everyone to confront painful truths. And somehow, on the other side of all that destruction, we were building something new. It wasn't the family any of us had imagined. It wasn't neat or perfect or traditional. Richard and Linda's marriage was over. Ethan and I were trying to make up for 31 lost years. David was navigating being a father to adult sons he'd never known existed. Charlotte and Tyler were adjusting to suddenly having twin brothers. But it was ours. Messy, complicated, born from pain and lies and DNA tests we never should have needed.
Looking back, I'm not sure if taking that DNA test was the best or worst decision of my life. It destroyed my family, but gave me a brother. It revealed lies, but uncovered truth. It hurt everyone involved, but also, maybe, started a healing process that was 31 years overdue. I think about Linda sometimes, making that impossible choice in a hospital room, traumatized and terrified, and trying to save at least one of her sons. I think about Richard, raising another man's child and loving him anyway. I think about David, who never got a chance to be a father to us. And I think about Ethan, spending his whole life feeling unwanted when the truth was so much more complicated than that. None of them were villains. None of them were heroes. They were just people trying to survive impossible circumstances, making decisions with incomplete information and broken hearts. And somehow, from all that pain, Ethan and I found each other. Not perfectly, not easily, but we found each other. If this story hit you in any way, hit that like button and subscribe to Reddit Family Fallout. We share stories of family drama, betrayal, and the messy reality of what happens when secrets come out. Drop a comment below. Have you ever taken a DNA test that revealed something unexpected? What family secret changed your life? Thanks for watching. Remember, family isn't just about DNA. It's about the people who show up, who stay, who choose you every day, even when the truth is hard. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.